All yours.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are coming from. We truly are a global community with a love and interest in parcels. Welcome. Let's see if I can get my slide to advance here. Welcome to the first meetup of 2023 and Happy New Year for 2023. For us, it's been pretty busy already. We held a holistic testing January 23rd through the 27th out in Redlands. And there's the group that actually came out, and we were testing the functionality that's available in 2.3. And also wanted to share, if you haven't been on campus in a while, the post office is now part of Esri, and they're redoing that. And it's one of the few times I've been out in Redlands where I can actually see mountains. And then this was the holistic lab. You can see how we were in there pounding away on functionality, looking at people's data. People brought their own data, and we were able to do testing on that. So for us, it's already been a busy year. At the end of last year, I did put out a ArcGIS Parcel Fabric end of year survey. I went ahead and left it open through this meetup, and I left the QR code there. So I'm going to leave that open for a second. So if you guys could, if you have not filled out this survey, I really would appreciate it if you could go out and actually do this survey. One of the big questions that you'll see in there is, what topics would you like to see in future meetups? So we have some answers, but would definitely like to open it up to a broader community there to get additional answers. And let me just show.
Yeah, I've just pasted the link in the chat of the GoToWebinar interface. So if you just click on that, you get to the survey.
Thank you. Let me just go through it real quick, just so that you guys can see what we're kind of asking here. So we're basically asking, how are you managing your parcels today? And so if you pick something other than, say, the Parcel Fabric, say it's just simple feature classes, we ask you if you plan to use the Parcel Fabric. If you say yes, great. If you say no, we ask kind of why you don't have any plans to do it, but then we still want to know what topics you want to see in the future, and then anything else you want to tell us. Now, if you are using the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric, we ask you a couple more questions. So, how long have you been using the fabric? 6 months to a year to 2 years, more than 2 years. So we've been out for quite a while now with the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric. Then we ask you, what motivated you to use the Parcel Fabric? And this is kind of a neat little control where you can actually drag and start ranking things according to what was more important to you in deciding to use the ArcGIS Parcel Fabric. And then we ask, how are you deploying it? Are you deploying it in a file geodatabase or in an enterprise? And if you say enterprise, we want to know, what do you see value in using web services to edit your parcels? And then we give you some space here to expand on your comments, provide any complaints, any enhancements you'd like to see on that. And then I ask, what are the 3 best things you like? You can put more than 3 if you want, but I asked for at least 3. But we also want to know, what are the things we're not doing right? So what are the 3 things you like least about the Parcel Fabric? So this will help us in guiding where we need to focus our development. This is not something we develop for ourselves. This is what we're developing here is for you guys in the community. So we want to make sure that the product we're releasing is actually fitting y'all's needs. Then I ask a little bit of questions about the Parcel Fabric resources and support. Do you use the Parcel Fabric community site? There's either a yes or a no there. Do you prefer reading help documentation, watching videos to understand workflows? So, I give you the option here, or if you want to put other. And then I ask also if you have actually attended the instructor-led training. Just kind of yes, I successfully completed it, or no, I haven't taken it and I don't plan to. And then I also ask a little bit about, have you ever submitted a support case? So there's a yes, and then was the support case handled to your satisfaction? We want to make sure that we're also besides providing the software that fits y'all's needs, that we're also supporting you in those needs. And then also at the end here, what topics would you like to see in future meetups? So I have a few here, and then there's always the other down here. And then I have that general, tell me anything else. Yes, sir.
Would that be a good time just to mention that we have 2 meetups lined up already? One by Mike Snook from Missoula County, Montana.
Perfect, Amir, yes.
Some customization with the Parcel Fabric. And we have another one by Case Dazoo about what is fit for purpose that is lined up in, I think, 20 days from now. Sorry.
And Case is?
Case is his title. He used to be the director of Dutch Cadastre International, and now he works for Esri for about 3 months, leading practice, land record administration practice for professional services.
Yep, thank you, Amir. Yeah, we do have 2 additional ones coming up, but we also want to know what other ones you want to hear from. Then I have this general area here. Anything else you want to tell me or tell the team? It's good or bad. We're open and hearing anything. And then optional, if you want to tell us who you are, feel free to put that information in. If you don't want to tell us who you are, you want to be anonymous and just provide feedback, that's fine as well. So I hope you can take a few seconds to go through and answer this survey. It'll definitely help us out a lot. So, like I said, 2023 is a pretty busy year already for us. Where can you actually see us or find us in 2023? I myself will be at the Esri Partner Conference. We have Tim, Jason, and Ken is going to be at the Developer Summit. We are also doing a pre-conference seminar at the Southeast User Conference, April 18th and 19th in Atlanta, Georgia. Of course, we'll be at the Esri User Conference. And then there's probably going to be a few of us at the FIG Working Week, which is happening in Orlando, Florida this year. For those who are not familiar with the FIG Working Week, that is an international surveying conference. I think 2 years ago it was in Amsterdam. Last year it was in Warsaw, Poland. This year it's in Orlando, and I think next year it's going to be in South Africa. So we'll be at the Orlando one this year, and hope to see some of you there as well. When can we have it? So planned availability. So 2.9.6, a patch for 2.9 was released on January 11th. There is another patch planned for 3.0.4. That's coming soon. I don't actually have a release date yet for that one. As far as release dates for 3.1, ArcGIS Pro, we're scheduled to have that out on February 23rd, 2023, and then Enterprise 11.1 will be out March 30th, 2023. And these are the .1 releases, so these are the longer term releases that are out there. So again, as always, those are the dates that we have planned. Something could slip. I don't think there's anything that's going to cause it to slip at this point in time, but you never know. So those are the release dates. So with that, Amir, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you want to share your screen?
Sure, let me do that. I think you'll have to stop sharing yours.
Okay, let's see, I'll stop here, and I think I can change presenter to you.
Yep, and I can show my screen. Do you see my screen?
Do you see I do.
You see Parcels, great. So more slides before we get to the demos. First thing we like to do every What's New session is to talk about the ideas on the Parcel Fabric community. What used to be called GeoNet, right? It's called now the community. And you can see there's more ideas have been entered during the 3.1 release cycle. And you can see that we used to have 17 ideas implemented. Now we have 8 more, 25. And the total numbers of ideas have grown. So keep please doing 2 things, submitting great new ideas that you might have, and also vote on the existing ideas. That helps us prioritize which one gets implemented. These are the top in product plan ideas. Maybe some of you recognize your own idea here. Some of them are actually might be coming from ArcMap, so those will not get implemented, right? Then, what's going on with ArcMap these days?
ArcMap is set, it's immature, set for retirement. I don't have the exact date, but there are no more development happening on ArcMap. Everything is going into Pro, and we're encouraging everybody to move to Pro. If I know it's sometimes a rough band-aid to pull off, but I'll tell you the editing experience that you experience in Pro is much better than anything that you had in ArcMap. So I encourage you to definitely, if you haven't looked into Pro, start moving that direction, because that's where we're putting all our focus.
So maybe start by just talking with someone that already moved to Pro, right? And that might help you make a decision. I think it's going to be deprecated in 2026, if I remember correctly. You can see there's also ideas under consideration. So sometimes there's still some business requirements and use cases to define. So we are considering having them in the product plan. And there's also many open ideas. And again, I see one is called ground to grid. I think that's actually already implemented. So we have to do probably better work in just closing some of those. And you can see the usual suspects here, same as last release: Mike, Snook, Josh, and Anna. We got a few of your ideas again implemented. So Mike wanted to allow duplication repeat of parcels, and you can see already a screenshot, and we'll see it soon in live demo how that works. Similar to what we used to have in ArcMap, ability to repeat multiple times. That's useful mostly for building vertical parcels or strata parcels where you have multiple floors with the same footprint. So we'll see a demo of that soon. Another one by Josh. He wanted to set historic on points. That's not exactly implemented, but the reason that happened is because build did not retire points that became historic. So now build marks them points that become historic when you build parcels. And we have another issue in the future to also be able to manually select points and make them historic. So it's two-phase approach here. Anna saw this annoying error message here when she aligned some of the parcels using her data. And this error message actually was somewhat true, but confusing. We fixed it. You should not see this error message anymore. And it has nothing really to do with the Z. If you had Z in your data or not, that's kind of a bug basically that got fixed, but was very annoying. As you can see, the compatibility is stretched out. So if you move to ArcGIS Pro 3.1, you can work with 10.9.1, ArcGIS Enterprise 11.0, or 11.1. We rearranged this table, and that's important, right? It's much easier to upgrade your ArcGIS Pro client than your ArcGIS Enterprise. So the first question, if you are moving to the Fabric, you need to do is ask yourself which enterprise system you are going to use. That's, of course, for those that use multi-user editing environment. And once you know that you're using, let's say, 11, you can decide if you want to use the 3.0 or the 3.1 client, for example. So that's important to know. One common mistake we've been hearing is that people just jump and use the upgrade dataset on their Parcel Fabric and move to 5, only to realize that their enterprise environment is still, let's say, on 10.8.1. And of course, that requires a 2.6 line. So now they are with a combination that's invalid, a version 5 Parcel Fabric and a 10.8.1 enterprise do not match, and they need to basically look for a backup, or because we don't have a downgrade of the Parcel Fabric versions. So that's just a quick update on the ideas status. If we have time, we might go over a few of them ourselves. The first demo, Jason, are you ready?
Yeah. I'm
Okay,
good to
so
go.
I will stop showing my screen.
All right, and I will share my screen.
I think, do I need to make you a presenter?
Yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And then a tour 2, and should see ArcGIS Pro.
Yep, we do.
All right, cool. All right, so I'm going to show just a couple of quality of life improvements that we have for 3.0. One that I'm actually just going to show just kind of off script here is we've changed. We've been constantly making improvements to our symbology and label expressions, and you can see here that the record symbology has been slightly improved to where you can see visually now when records border another one, you can see that the top line here is a little bit thinner, but when right here on the left-hand side, it's bordering another record, you can see the line's a little bit bolder. So that just means that these two records kind of, they're adjacent to one another at this point. So it's just a little easier visual representation of the record symbology. Another quality of life improvement, the other two are going to be all participating in a record-driven workflow. So let's go ahead and start the record-driven workflow like we always do by creating a new record. So I'm going to give this record a unique name, and I'm going to click Create. And just like always, we have our active record displayed here on the top left in the record heads-up display. Now,
Listen, I cannot see it very well.
Yes, I know, and that is what many of the complaints are. Like the record HUD is not very visible. We need to make it a little bit more visible. We want it to be a little bit bigger. So we've added a control here. Now, if you go to the menu button and you click on Options, you can switch between small, medium, and large. This changes the size of it to utilize the different icon sizes. The first one was the 16 by 16. These are 24 by 24 size icons. You can see even the text changes size as well. And then finally, you can change it to large to have it the maximum 32 by 32 icon size. Another thing that people don't know about, this isn't new to 3.1. This has actually just been in there for as far as I can remember. This is where it's not a bug, it's a feature. You could actually move the records HUD to anywhere within the map view. And it'll stay in this location. So if you wanted it in the bottom left, if you're more comfortable with it down there, maybe you want it just top center, you can do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to options and switch this back to, let's just switch it back to medium. Let's make it a little bit different for this demo. And we're going to keep it at this size. So this next improvement is to the traverse. So I'm going to start my traverse and I'm going to start here at this point. And I'm going to start entering in my bearing, 88, 18, 37. I'm going to go to the northeast, and let's just do 200 feet. So I'm going to do this a couple times. And you can see as I do this, the traverse is going off screen. I have to go now leave the 10 key to grab my mouse to now pan my map to see where this endpoint is. Now, we found this to be, a lot of users want the traverse to automatically pan to the location where the end of the line is currently. So if you go into the, didn't want to close traverse. If you go into the menu button on the traverse pane and you click auto pan, this is actually on by default. I have it turned off. I had it turned off right now for this demo. You'll now notice that after I set my start location, type in my same measurements, so 88, 18, 37, 1 to 200. As I enter in the lines, as I get closer to the edge of the screen will automatically pan to the end of the line that I've entered. This allows you to visually see where your traverse currently is. So if you've made a mistake, maybe in your data entry, you'll know that you'll catch it right away rather than waiting until you're done entering your traverse and looking and examining it. So this keeps you in the current location. It doesn't zoom, it only pans. So you're just changing your map location. You're not changing your map extent like zooming in or out. So these are just a couple of quality of life improvements. These are little things that we always like to get into every release just to improve, data entry, small little performance tweaks, or just things that make life easier for our users as they're doing their day-to-day work.
And I think many of you voted on this idea to be implemented when we asked it in the last 3.0 meetup. So here it is.
Yeah.
If you like it, use it. If you don't like it, turn it off.
Yep. I like my heads-up display in the small mode. I like to have it 16 by 16 icons. I do like the autopan though. It's great. All right. With that, I think those are the few small improvements that I have to show for this. And Amir, I think is it passing it back to you?
Yep. Thank you, Jason. I'll share my screen again. Do you see my screen?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
we see the Pro. Yep.
Excellent. So the first demo is mostly to support the workflow of the duplication vertically. Here we see Maricopa County, Arizona. They do manage their condominium with a field that specifies the floor number. You can see also that the floor footprint for the first floors might change as you go up. You can see here there's a change on a different floor. And let's see how we might be able to enter one of those in Pro. So it's much easier to enter we're talking here about basically 2.5D. It's not full 3D, or you can call it attribute-driven 3D. We are using attributes like height and the relative height relative to the surface and extrusion of the height of the floor to basically drive the 3D symbology. Here we have a plat. Let's just zoom to it, and we can see that it specifies a new building. I think I have a bookmark that shows the name of this plat. So we can see it's Maricopa County, and this is called Safari Drive, and there's some more letters. So the first step in a record-driven workflow will be to create a new record, and we'll create it as Safari Drive. And the record type, you can see you can define your own. I'll go with a condominium here. And the recorded date, we can fill it if we want, but I'll just keep that to save some time. So we have the active record, and I'm using the medium size here, as Jason showed. So now we can look at the floor footprints, and there will be, here's floor number 1. We can see that there are unit 1001 here, and it goes all the way to 1005, 6, and then there is a limited common element here. That's probably the entrance on this side, and the units continue to 1008, 1010, and again, another limited common element at the back. Luckily, we also have the DWG for this data, and I have already selected the lines I'm interested to use to create floor number 1 from the DWG. I don't know if you know that, but when you select something, some features, it doesn't matter if it's in a DWG or not. You can always right-click, go to your selection. So let's see the selection here, and you can say make layer from selected features, right? So there were multiple layers in this DWG, and I've selected the one that are relevant to use already. So it makes my life easier now to just select them and use them to create floors. So what we want to do is use them to the copy lines too, and we are going to copy them to the text layer. So here we have it created. We can turn off the DWG, and in order to make them floor aware, what you need to add is a field called floor order. So that's a long integer, and the name of the field is floor order in one word. And if you put this new field on the polygons and the lines of a parcel type, they know now that the parcel type is floor aware. So you don't need it for all your parcel types, but just for the one you're going to start duplicating vertically. And this is how we can associate between the lines and the polygons for each floor. So right now, if we look, that field will not be populated. So the way to populate is just select the top nodes, and then we can say this is for floor number 1, and go to the polygons and specify that this is also for floor number 1. And now we know that there are 4 floors for that floor. We need to build them. So now we can just press build, and there will be parcels being created. And the next thing we can do is to use the sequential numbering on this layer. So we're going to choose the correct layer. It's the text, but not the text lines, but the text polygons. And we're going to use the name field. The value started, we saw in 2001, and we incremented by 1, by 0. And we just can snake through that until here. So that those are the first unit, and from here to here. And we should see the floor number have been updated. So, and we can also see in the 3D view that the representation for those parcels. So we have the 3D scene view side by side with the 2D map view, and here we can see the floors are counting together. So let's continue to the next floor. We also have the DWG for the floors 2 to 6. If we look at that plat first, you will see that the floors repeat for the units from 2000, floor number 2 to floor number 6 here. So let's turn off the plat, and we already have the DWG for those floors. But the footprint is not the same in those floors, so it's kind of in our way. So what I can do here is use the range slider on this layer to not see floor number 1. So here we moved it to subterranean floor, so we don't see floor number 1 now, and we can easily select the second floor lines. And we're going to repeat the same workflow. We're going to copy the lines to the appropriate parcel type. Now that they've been copied, they have no value, so here they are. And we can turn off the DWG layer, and we can select the lines and the parcels, go to the attribute pane, and repeat the same exercise and associate them to floor number 2. So by default, they are floor number 0. So now we're moving them up 2 floors, and they will disappear because we are filtering out floor number 2. So we move them up, and now we can basically move to floor number 2 if we wanted to. So let's move up. Here we see floor number 2. And again, we can build the parcels again for that floor. And now we'll repeat the sequential, use the sequential numbering tool. And we're going to start with value 2001, increment by 1. And it starts here. And there's no common element in floor number 2. And we've done that. And now we probably want to duplicate that. So now the new duplicate parcels tool will recognize that this is floor aware floor parcels basically, and they have a floor order. So it's already, the update field is already available for you. It's also smart enough to know that we are on floor number 2. So it's going to start with floor order number 3 and increment by 1 by default. So the only thing we need to know is how many more floors we need to duplicate it for. So we need floor number 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's 4 more times, and press OK to get the other units in the other floors. So as you can see here now in the 3D view, those floors have been created. So let me just go to the Explorer tool. So and we can see now the building in 3D has been created. We probably want to in the 2D view to attribute each floor appropriately because we duplicated them with the wrong attributes, right? So if we just minimize that, we can just go minimize that. We can just go floor by floor. So floor number 3, you probably want again to start with a sequential numbering and make it as 3000 1, increment by 1, and do that to have the appropriate floor numbers, and then move 1 floor up. Now, and repeat this process, which we'll skip now. So if you are going to create this map in 3D, if you look, we don't need all the layers to be in 3D, just the layers of interest. So what you want to do is put most of your data in the 2D layers, so they are rasterized on the surface, and only the features that you want to see in 3D, put them in the 3D layers. And for every layer, there's important things to define is go to the properties and define the elevation of that. So you can see that here we're using a custom, in this case, field that basically uses the floor order to know the height in which to start to draw the layer. This can also be coming from a real field. So if you have the relative height to the surface that you're using, you can specify that, and that's going to be much easier. Just specify a field. And then the second thing you want to specify is the extrusion, right? So, and the extrusion type. So in this case, again, it's a formula, but if you had a field called a floor height, you can just use that, which would be more accurate and true to the legal record. So that's the first example of how to use a new feature. Other tools were also enhanced to accommodate that. So you saw build, you saw duplicate, but when we do other operations like reconstruct from seeds and so on, it basically allows us to know which boundary lines belong to which floor. So we don't get into this spaghetti of lines. And if you wanted to know how to create this range slider, then you just, again, go to your layer, press properties, and there's a tab here called range. You add a new one called floor order and specify this field, and it will actually scan your data and figure out the range that you're using to have that. You can also have them renamed if you add additional fields, and that's just standard ArcGIS Pro functionality, nothing specific to the Parcel Fabric. And we've added two, one for the 2D view and one for the 3D view. So that's if you getting into that and give us a feedback on that. The next thing we'd like to show, so Jason already showed the active record resizing, the autopan, and is this functionality. So there's many countries that have a partial title. You can see here one coming from Mongolia. And in this partial title, you can also see a map. And if we zoom to this map, you'll see that it has a sequence of numbers, and those sequence of numbers also appear on the right-hand side with their coordinates here. And this required this customer to do a lot of customization. We also saw in the community the same requirement coming, in this case, from Saudi Arabia. We also had a similar requirement from Colombia. And again, you can see a map with a sequence of points. And here you can see the coordinates of those points. This is, I think, in Ghana, similar. This is a business partner of us called Medim that works in Zambia. Again, similar concept, a map showing a sequence of points in this case, but this could also be a sequence of lines. So in order to create a layout that will allow you to create such a parcel/report or a title map, we wanted to make that process easier. Of course, this sequence for parcels for parcel 87 will not be relevant for the parcels that are adjacent to it. So it cannot be part of the schema. Those numbers need to be per parcel. So we also wanted to make sure those are in working clockwise direction. And you can also export the lines and have a line table that gives you, you can show, let's say, the cargo dimensions of those lines, and ability to have two tables, one for curves and one for straight lines. And so the way we can do that now is using a new geoprocessing tool called Export Sequence Parcel Feature. The input for that is a parcel layer and there should be only one parcel selected. So if we have more or zero, we basically don't export that. If you wanted to export many parcels, you can create a GP model and iterate through your features, but one parcel at a time is exported with all its features. So we export one polygon, the lines, the points, the connection lines that are touching that parcel, also the points that are touching those connection lines, the end of those connection lines or the start of those that are not touching the parcel, and any associated records to that parcel, or the parcel lines could be multiple records, and of course any related data. So if you have Finchley annotation, if you have attachments or related tables, those will also get exported into a feature data set that you specify. In here, the target feature data set, you can specify which corner you want the sequence to start. By default, it's the northeast corner, but you can specify another, the northwest or southeast, etc. And by default, if you have this data in the feature data set and you do that again for the next parcel, will overwrite this data. So of course, if you don't want it overridden, you can create a new feature data set and then export to another location. But it's so easy to export and that we just override it. And that is an advantage, because if you had a layout defined that points to this data, you can just update the layout extent and press the export to PDF, and you have it created. So the formatting here that you see here is exactly the same formatting that you get in the sequential numbering tool that we just used in the demo before. So if you wanted to put pad it with 0 or start with an alphanumeric some character, you can specify it in here. So if you wanted all the points to always start with P and then 01, you would say P dash dash. That would be the format to have P01, P02, and so on. Here's a so this was good, but you can also use that in a script tool. In a script tool, like in this case, will allow you to do more and even complete the workflow by generating a complete PDF. So in this case, you can see that there were also legal scales defined. So you cannot just export a feature and zoom to feature, because there's a requirement to adhere to one of the available legal scales here. And it will also export the PDF. So that's another Python command. And when you press that, it will open the PDF. It also accommodates a situation where you have multiple layouts, each layout used potentially for different purposes. So as part of the parameters, you can specify the different layouts. We talked about this one. And again, flow awareness is a choice that you make. You can apply it for your specific parcel type. About how to configure things. I'll go over the slides before we hand it over to Tim. There's also enhancement to our REST API. We made the REST API ability to run commands asynchronously. That is in part in preparation for what we call the online Parcel Fabric that we are also working on. And one more demo here to show the export sequential numbering. There's still some bugs with that, so just bear with me. But if I had to create a layout that shows the exported parcel for this one, I would create a file GDB. Then I would create a new feature data set. Let's call it my title map or parcel report. I'll use the same special reference that is used in this map. And now we have a place to export the data. Now that we have that, we can use the export sequential parcel features tool. So the input, I'll take now the tax parcels here. So the one is selected here. So here it is. My target feature data set is the one we've just created. I can specify where I want to start it. So let's go with the northeast. And let's have all the points start with P dash, and let's pad it like we talked about. and the lines maybe L dash, same format. Let's go be consistent here. And we can choose to sequence the curves separately or not. I'll just sequence them together. And now we can export this data. So it's exporting now for the first time. And you can see that there's one parcel selected. If we had more, it would have not run, it would fail. So it has been exported. Now we can choose what we want to do with this data. So we can right click and say add to a new map and look at that map. So let's zoom. It's in Sheboygan County. We can also, might be easier just to zoom to layer. So let's do that. And here we see the exported parcel. So we can now symbolize it however we want, right? So let's say I want to symbolize it in that way. And I want the points to be symbolized in this manner, or this manner, as we might want to give the points a label. So now we have a sequence, a new field there called sequence. So we'll use that to symbolize it by, and you can see, let's make it bigger. So we have those points sequence, and we can do the same to the lines we just exported. So we can label the lines, they already have Kogo, but if you wanted, instead of Kogo, we can just say that we label it just directly using a field. So label features in this class, we can just use again the sequence field, and can give it different colors. So you can see that here. And now that we have that, if I wanted now to include this in a layout, I would, let's give it a name. Let's say this is parcel title or parcel report app, and you would insert a new layout. So let's create a new layout, and you can specify the size. I'm just going to go with a random size here, and it's coming out blank. And now we need to insert a map frame in here. So on the layout tab, you can create a new layout. So the way to do that, where was it? I think insert. Here's the elements. Not a map series, it's a map frame. Here it is. And I can specify the one we just created. And this would be step number 1 to create a layout. So you can see the layout has been created, but of course there's no table in here. So if I wanted to create a table, I would create a new table frame element. So let's create that over here. And it's pretty small. I can double click on that. And we can specify that it's coming from the points, but we don't want to see all the rows. We just want to see the name. Let's say even not the name, maybe the sequence, right? I'll specify now. We don't need to see those fields and just the XY, let's say. And you can define the size of that. So in here, you can specify and the sorting. So I'm not going to go and specify everything here, but this gives you the idea of how you would start creating this with a dynamic table in a layout and add all the other elements. So with that, I'll stop now presenting and handing over to Tim. If there's any questions, just put it in the questions as well, and we will start answering them. Tim?
Yep, thanks, Amir.
Okay.
I'm going to start.
Presenter.
How's that? See the screen?
Yeah, we see some pro concepts.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to be talking about .NET SDK, some new content in these Pro Concepts pages for Parcel Fabric as well as for Kogo. You won't be able to get to these, they're not published yet, so these are just the internal repos. But I can show you the new content. It's down at the bottom here, and it actually is based on what Amir was just showing. It's we already did have this at 3.0 in the .NET SDK, so you can actually already write enhancements to do that kind of work. And the new content shows how you can it's add some extra code on how to actually use the sequenced parcel line information here. So this is the new content down at the bottom, some extra code snippets. And then on the Kogo side, we have new content also way down at the bottom here, and that is essentially adjusting a loop traverse using compass rule and getting Kogo area, and it shows this example and code of how to do that. And let's skip over here to my demo here. And just to show some of that code in action, I have this utilities add-in tab that is partnered up with our parcel record workflow and quality tabs in the ribbon. And you'll see here on this tab, we've got a few tools. Some are just rehosted from the existing Pro tools, and there are other new ones that are here as well. I'm just going to start going from right to left here. Here's the parcel report tool. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to click inside a parcel. And you'll see it gives us a little parcel report. That's kind of the same information that Amir was just showing there with the sequenced lines. So you can see that we have some clockwise lines here, and I click close to a point. The closest point is where it starts. And you can see here we have our first radius 50, 142.13. And you can see also that it doesn't matter which way the lines are going. In this case, it automatically switched the bearing from northeast to southwest. That's 513 west. And it also went and calculated the misclose and did all that on the fly and calculated the Kogo area using these Kogo attributes.
And it found the right lines, right? Because there's overlapping lines to the west. Correct.
That's yep. So you can see here that we have overlapping lines here. We got the 4974 and 3172. So in this case, we want 3172. So if we click here, let's make sure we have 3172. So that is in fact what we have. This is just text. So if you needed to go and send us as an email somewhere, you can go copy paste that out. And so that was that tool. And then I've also added these, just rehosted these tools, the measurement tools. I always find these useful when doing Kogo type exercises. So that those are just added in there. And then there's also a tool here called Update Misclose and Area. And typically we already have misclose and area on the parcel, but sometimes it depends on the order that you're doing your work. Sometimes if you created the parcel polygon first and then done a build, you may not get that information on there. So, and this also uses the sequenced lines. So I'm just going to select these two parcels, and you can see the label pop in here. You can see we've got our 10,171 square feet over here, and the 0.31 acres over here. So this is a configuration. So you can configure the systems such that you can define what your large parcel area unit is. So in this case, we're saying it's a quarter of an acre. And when it's anything that's greater than a quarter of an acre, we're going to switch to acres. Anything that's less than a quarter of an acre, we're going to keep it square feet. So it's just an example of a customization. And here we have the create remainder tool. So this is just a tool where we can go and create a remainder. So let's go and add some new lines. And record, seed, that's the line. I'll do it a different way. Discard. I'll just create the polygon. So if I go here.
Tim, I think you didn't connect on the bottom left there. The 2 points were close to each other, and I think you snapped to the top
Oh,
point.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Yep.
it was
Yeah,
it's still an open
so
traverse.
that.
And it is on purpose to show how creative helps you find undershoots, right?
Let's try that again. Go on.
Not a bug, it's a demo. That's how you do it.
There we go. All right, finally. And back to our utilities. Let's go create remainder. And there we go. So just a single one click. That's just leveraging the underlying clip utility that's available on the editing tab. But with that tool, you kind of have to be very specific in how you set it up. And that's just all wrapped up in the create remainder tool here. So that's the other customization. And then lastly, or almost lastly, there's also now the ability to undo and redo only edits. So if, for example, I turn on my subdivision and then I go undo, I'm not going to, if I click this button up here, undo the turn on the subdivision, but I don't want to do that. I just want to undo my edits. So I can do that right in here. So these are undo redos are specifically for edits only. And it's true that you can go and filter your undo stack and redo stack up here, but you actually, it's not persisted with your project. So that's a bit tricky because you first have to make an edit and then you have to go and set your edits as the filtering, and then and the next time you open your project, you have to do that all over again. So in this case, with these buttons, they're just always there for you.
Now, Tim, can you add those buttons to the quick access toolbar?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So you would just need to install the add-in, and then even if you didn't have a fabric, you'd be able to add those to the quick access toolbar, and that would work for any standard edit as well. And then lastly, this is an add-in that is already out there and available. I'm going to show what. So let's say I have to create a connection line from this point to this control point. So if I do that today, I right click and I say direction distance. And let's say I know my bearing and distance are these values, 50 feet. And I hit enter. I get my COGO attributes and I've got everything I want. But because I had to change the distance, we now have a little shortfall here. So in order to fix that, I'm going to have to build and then merge points and do all that sort of thing to make sure that they are connected. And instead of doing that, there's a custom feature template here called COGO line. And what that does is it allows us to snap to the point, snap to the control point, and then there's a little checkbox here that says hold endpoint position. So I can now say 50 and 10, and it creates my connection line for me. And it is also connected to my control point, so I don't have to worry about doing that additional work in the workflow. Also related to this tool is that you can, instead of using tabs to go between the fields, like you do with the direction distance tool, you can just hit enter. So I can enter and 25. And of course, in that case, it kept my last point fixed, but if I didn't want to do that, I could go like that and enter 30 and then uncheck that box and it extends it to the correct location. If I do that again and I want to go the other direction, I can say flip the bearing around, or say -40, and it goes the other direction. So just a few little enhancements there on that tool, and that is available for you currently. It works on 3.0 and higher, and it is at this location right here.
Hey, Tim, can you paste that? Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. So Tim, again, just to make sure everybody is clear, because there's question, this is not shipped with ArcGIS Pro 3.0 or 3.1. you'll have to install the add-in.
Yeah, you have to go and yep.
Yeah, and then developers that would like to discuss it further with Tim, where would be a good place to do that, Tim?
Well, you can put it on the community if you like. We can start talking up there, or you can email me.
Or
you can
Dev Summit.
or Dev Summit. There you go. Yeah, there you go.
In person. See the real Tim.
That's right. Yep. So you can come and see some of this work at the Dev Summit, and Ken Gallagher and I will be presenting this. So look forward.
And if there's features, and also if there's features people really like from this list of potential tools, right? Also good to provide this feedback, and maybe we'll make those core functionality in Pro later, right? So it also helps us to know what to develop.
Someone was asking, how about a curve?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Josefina was asking about that.
There you go.
Luckily, nobody asked about the Bezier curve, right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yep. And that is me. Did I paste that, or a spiral? Oh, spiral. Yeah, spirals are there too if you want to see how to create spirals with the API. It is also here. Right here. So this gives you a breakdown of how to do that as well.
Very nice and extensive, team.
Yep. Thank you. See you all at the Dev Summit.
So the last thing to talk about, I think, is talking about the road ahead, where we're going. And let's talk a bit about that. Hopefully stuff you like to see. I think we talked about it also last time, and we're still working on that. So the ability to take a Parcel Fabric offline, it's going to be based on the existing functionality in Pro. You have this UI on the map tab, just a download map. And then it basically moves the data in the extent you're working in to your mobile geodatabase, a SQLite database that you work against. So it's going to always be fast and local. And then you can press the sync button. The sync button will move your changes to the child named version that has been created for you when you created the downloaded map. And when you can sync many times and you are done, you'll be able to remove that. We do that so you can use ArcGIS Pro offline. Let's say if there's a pandemic, or if you have any issues with your network, internet connection, because the data will be local. There are, of course, special logic that we implemented to make sure that we keep parcels intact. So if you have a subset of a parcel taking offline, you'll get all the points and lines that belongs to that parcel and so on. We also heard the requirement that some of you have subcontractors that work for them, so that might be working well for them. They can remote and work locally. And this will also be the basis for workflows that are done in the field. So basically a runtime and field maps app to be able to take data offline and work on it in the field and then sync it back to the named version or to ArcGIS Online. This is another thing that didn't make it in 3.1, but will make it in 3.2. And I know many of you put it as the first priority, is ability to depict the parcel lineage. So select a parcel or a record and see all the generation, parents, grandparents, and so on that relate to that parcel. And this will leverage existing functionality in ArcGIS Pro that is called link chart. So basically, when you use this functionality, we'll create a link chart very easily for you that already depicts those relationships. Another type of layout that we haven't gotten to implement this release, but plan to do in the near term is a parcel lineage map. Some of you call it the before and the after. Some of you call it the is and the was. Basically showing the parent parcels and the child parcels of a given transaction, of a given record. So you can then decide to put that on the same layout or on two separate layouts, however you, whatever your business requirement is. And that's basically it. So we're probably going to follow the same pattern you saw before with the export sequence parcel features. That's going to probably be export lineage features or something like that. Online Parcel Fabric is another big one. So you can now deploy Parcel Fabric on ArcGIS Enterprise for multi-user editing or on a file geodatabase, but there's nothing in the middle. So the online Parcel Fabric will be basically a Parcel Fabric on ArcGIS Online. It will be a light deployment, which means it will have reduced capabilities, but exactly the same schema. So you could put it on ArcGIS Online and pull it back, and it will be basically the same Parcel Fabric. Some clients will have to be smart to do the right thing. So ArcGIS Pro is a smart client. When you move a point, things move together. If you use a web browser, it will need to know about the topology to do the right thing. Of course, as you know, ArcGIS Online is very easy to use. And we think that the customers that will use that is either customers that need less capabilities, or those that want to have a hybrid deployment, basically one on-premise and one on the cloud, the SaaS, and or customers that might find it difficult to deploy ArcGIS Enterprise. If you want to know what we mean by reduced capabilities, we mean basically that there's no versioning on ArcGIS Online. There will be no geodatabase topology centralized on ArcGIS Online. Attribute rules in the first releases will not be available. That's something that might come later on. No ability to run least square adjustment, and no ability to perform complicated operations for 3D cadastre, the future's 3D cadastre, like merging and clipping remainder using true 3D geometries. That will also not be available. And talking about 3D cadastre is another area that many teams have been working on to support the new 3D object geometry type as feature service. And the next phase is to support them as branch versioning. So be able to have a lot of scale the data up, of course, not just one project, many 3D objects in your country, and being able to then, of course, perform operations like calculating volumes, performing some quality checks between the different 3D objects, and clipping, merging, and so on. So that's something that is on our roadmap. And then, would you like to speak about that, since your picture is on it?
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, I've seen a lot of good information coming in also through the chat. You know, if there's additional questions, feel free. Oh, Amir, why is my email missing there? My email is dstone@esri.com. I'll put that into the chat. Feel free to email me. If you guys have any questions, concerns, more importantly, I hope you guys fill out that survey that we have out there. But yeah, if you have any questions and need to, assistance in getting started as far as, what do I need to do? Feel free to reach out to me, and I will contact you.
And as a last reminder is that the next meetup, the next event is Mike Snook from Missoula County, Montana. We have no idea what he's going to present, so we're really excited. We know that he's going to keep it real. And we see that some of you have already registered. And then March 7th, we have Fit for Purpose Data Administration. What that means, case is many times referred to Mr. Fit for Purpose. So he's the best to speak what that is. So feel free to register, and see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye all.
Thank you.